Hello, good morning. It is Wednesday, October 28th, and I am that developer dad. And I am this week deploying the application that we've been building from my local machine up to Azure. And it's been a learning experience. I've worked on Azure hosted applications before and designed applications to be hosted in the cloud and so on and so forth, but I've never gone through the actual hands-on keyboard, eyes-on screen exercise of going from no Azure subscription to designing a layout and setting everything up and all of that stuff completely on my own without help before. So this is a journey, and there's going to be a lot more oopses and head scratching and so on as we go, but I feel like we're going to get there. So let's very quickly open up a new Safari window, and just in case it needs to ask me for credentials and stuff like that, I'm going to pull that off to the other screen so that we're not leaking identity information out to the internet. And it looks like I am signed in. So I can pop over to the GM Tools app, and it says the resource is not available. Why is that? Let's go home. Cancel. Go to my billing. Make sure I haven't had any cost overruns overnight or anything like that. I can't see anything on that view. All right, how about here? So here's my SQL Server. Let's take a look at this. And we'll pop in here. Oh, and there's that app ID that I couldn't find. Okay. Settings, apps. And let's go in here and let me share my screen. Here we are. Okay, so just the link from the Azure portal homepage seems to be acting funny. Here we go. It says it's running. All right. And if we try to log into this, it'll load in just a second. Sometimes it takes a minute. Or more than a minute. I'll just pull this over here to a second to my other monitor, and we can take a look at what's going on here. So here's all the stuff. The reason it wasn't loading for me right away yesterday is because I needed to add this startup command over in the configuration blade on the App Tools stuff. And I have a suspicion that I'm going to need to change some things at the code level to access environment variables and so on as we go through this morning. And for some reason, this thing is being super pokey. Excuse me. Says the application's running, but let's see. We'll try again. Yeah, for some reason, it looks like the hosting environment isn't happy just yet. But that's okay, because we need to actually make some changes in our code. Because I can get the actual application to load, we get to the home page, and then as soon as I hit NPCs, it tries to reach out to the database and fails. Now, it works fine when I'm running locally. Here we go. I added some authentication around it yesterday, offline. So it's going to ask me to sign in. And it's working. And we see that the application has loaded, and we're ostensibly hosted in Azure. The only way we can tell is by looking at the... Oh, goodness. I didn't mean to grab that quite so hard. The only way we can tell that we're connected through Azure is because of that address bar up here. We can see that it's using the temporary URL, but when we go to our NPCs list, it tries to hit the database and then fails miserably. So I've looked into the log files, and we can do that. Oops. What even are you doing, Rob? So if I look at the log stream, and it'll populate here in a second, it just says there is a problem accessing the NPCs, fetching the NPC list failed, but it doesn't really tell me much more than that, because I'm catching, wrapping, and then rethrowing all of these exceptions as we go, and I'm not handling them I'm handling them okay, but I'm not handling them in a way that really gives me the information I need for troubleshooting. So for that, because I don't want to be spraying error messages about the internals of my system all over the internet, I need to do a little bit of work to add some logging. Let's close down styles, LLM provider, and NPC access. Well, we'll leave NPC access SQL provider open. And we are passing in a logger here, so that's good. And theoretically, we're logging our error, but I don't know that we are necessarily logging out to the console, because I'm not seeing that information out at the console level. And perhaps we're not even getting to this part. I suspect that our issues are in trying to access the configuration. So let's go. First thing we're going to do is we're going to remove and sort all of these usings, because that's an easy change. And the first thing we should have done is create a new branch. And let's call this defect / add logging for cloud diagnosis. Yes, let's move that over. So When you're debugging and troubleshooting on your local machine, you can do things like add breakpoints and step through the code and all of that stuff through your IDE. And when you're on a remote server, if the server is on-prem and your IT department agrees to install the necessary software extensions on your web servers, you could attach your IDE, your Visual Studio instance, to that remote server. Although most IT departments are going to say, heck no, that's a security issue. And they wouldn't be wrong. And in the cloud, it's frequently even more obtuse than that. Now, Microsoft's recently done things like add developer tunnels and so on, but those, so that you can connect your IDE to a cloud resource. But A, I haven't figured out how to use them, and B, looking through the portal for the at my app service resource, it looks like the SKU, the stock keeping unit ID for the particular version of the app service that I'm using doesn't support dev tunnels. I'm not surprised. I'm using the free version, so of course it's going to have fewer features than the more premium, more expensive versions. So what do we do when things aren't working quite the way we want them to? Well, we have to create a logger, and we have to like kind of drop out trails of breadcrumbs out to some console somewhere so that we can see what's going on. So first thing we need to do is we need to add a logger for the main program. And for that, I hear running water, and that always scares me. Oh, no, it's fine. The sound of running water when there's nobody in the room where the water is running is one of the most terrifying things you can think of. All right, loggers. We need a logger that we can use at the program stand-up level. So to do that, and I've done it before, and again, it's one of those not in my muscle memories. So what I need to do is C# create a logger for use in Program.cs main. Here we go. We'll just go to Stack Overflow. Excuse me. And I think all we got to do is create a new log factory, add console, logger, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And I'll just create a debug log. Okay, yeah. All we do is we set up a logger the same way we do for everything else. We just do it within the scope of static void main. Create a logger. Create a logger here so we can track what's happening as our application spins up. So var log factory equals new logger McFactory. And then we're going to add console log with log level dot I think debug is just below information. debug. Debug. Debug is what you do when you lower the font size on something. Add debug. What the heck is that? This is from like 7 years ago, so that may be completely out to lunch. Rob, come on. There we go. And that's right, because the logging stuff doesn't necessarily include any logging providers. Come on. What are you doing? Give me my ideas to fix it, you silly goose. My IDE seems to be sleepy this morning, but that's okay. I know what we need to add. So, I'm going to manage my NuGet packages. And I got to browse. And let's see here. Logging. So have we got abstractions? I don't think we've even got abstractions. What's installed over here? Let's take a look at our packages that are installed. Not much. Just ASP.NET Core. So, Microsoft dot extensions dot logging, and I want to just add console because this essentially just lets us log the standard out. And it's got a whole stack of dependencies. Yeah. Okay, great. Install. Okay. And now I should be able to. What even are you doing? Jinkies. Let's do this. We'll do it the old-fashioned way. Log factory dot add provider new gonna give me some intelligence. Console logger. Okay, I probably need to. I love how they change things significantly from one version of .NET to the next. I'm going to need to go back to C#.NET 8. Here we go. ASP.NET Core. Create builder, blah, blah, blah. I'll pull this over so y'all can see what I'm looking at. So builder, logging, clear providers, logging.add console. I did all of that earlier. Create logs, whatever. Configuring the logging. Where the heck Here we go. Login program.cs. Of course, this doesn't really help us until after we've built the app. Logging head console. Add simple console. That doesn't help me. Nope, nope. Filtering rules, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't help me. Oh, gosh. Okay. Fundamentals, logging and monitoring, HTTP, health checks, metrics, built-in metrics. None of this helps me. Dependency injection, yeah. Yeah. We'll get to all of that. I just want to log inside the darn thing. Logging providers. Let's go here. Multiple providers can be enabled. Following. Console debug event source and event log for Windows only. That's fine. Let's take a look at what we've got when we've got it. So here's our builder. Control C. Actually, we're just going to Control X that. Paste that here. Now, var logger startup logger equals builder dot logging dot add console, do all the things. What is going on with my robot? It's being silly. Okay. Services? Dot. No. Var console provider equals new log provider. What are you complaining about? Yeah, what do you need? I options monitor. Golly. All right. Now, what do you need again? What's that object it's complaining about? I options monitor of console logger options. All right. Var console log options equals new I options monitor of console logger options. Uh, var log factory equals new log factory providers, filter options. Let's just do this. Log factory dot add console. Now, that is probably happening. Oh, no, there it is. Is retained only for compatibility is egg console with this ilogging builder. What? Come on. Oh, yeah, Rev. Hey, what's up, buddy? Yeah, it seems to change materially from one major .NET upgrade to the next. And, once you've got a functioning API, why the heck would you change that API significantly on every major version update? It's very silly. And, like, I'm configuring logging for the rest of the application down here in configure services or create services. Am I? I think it's the first thing I do. Yeah. Builder.logging.add console. Easy peasy. But I'm having issues on spin up in Azure. So I want to create a logger out here in public main so that I can write messages out to the log feed. And holy cow, they make it really, really, really not easy. So this add console is deprecated and they want me to pass in a logging builder. Well, where the hell do I get a logging builder? And what even is that? Like, is like the dependency injection thing needs you to provide a dependency injector. What? I want some chickens, but to get a chicken I need an egg, but to get an egg I need a chicken. So yeah, it's like to get this job you need experience. Well, I would like to gain some experience. Well, you're gonna need to get that somewhere else. Or like trying to open your first bank account as an adult, where you walk into the bank with a bunch of money in your pocket and say, "Hi, I'd like to open a bank account," and they say, "Well, you need a credit score to be able to open a bank account here." I'm like, "Okay, so how do I get a credit score?" Well, first you need a bank account, and it's just where does it start? So Log Factory obviously is not the first thing I need to build. Actually, let's just leave this up. Factory dot add console. Now, even though it's deprecated, I could drop a pragma on here, but I really don't wanna. So an ilogging builder. ilogging builder log builder equals what? How do I instantiate? Where do I get a new log builder? Logging providers. Let's see. Logging builder. Yeah, just find the darn thing. ASP.NET Core Blazor logging. Here we go. Logging configuration can be loaded from app settings files. I don't have an app settings file yet. Yeah, whatever. Server-side logging, client-side logging. I don't care about client-side logging. Builder.build. var host equals builder.build. Oh, eat poop. All right. When all else fails, and you got a question about Microsoft stuff, yeah, chances are, Rev, that older project is probably using deprecated APIs at this point. Come on. Here we go. Let's get rid of all this news nonsense. I'm building an ASP.NET Core app in dotNet 8. I want to be able to write log messages to the console inside program main before I call builder.build. What do I need to do? Okay. I'm going to try that after Copilot disappoints me. Okay, that's interesting. Rev just posted some information in the chat. So let's see here. To write log messages to the console before calling builder.build, you can configure the logging in Web Application Builder and then use the logger to write messages. Here's how you can do it. Set up the logging providers before building the application. Write log messages. Thanks. Create builder. Okay, so it looks like part of my problem is self-inflicted. Because the builder doesn't know what a logger is at this point. Because I did the silly and moved the logging configuration into the create services method. So if I make that the very first thing I do, var startup log equals builder.services.get required service of type iLogFactory iLoggerFactory change that to factory. What do you mean services doesn't? Logging.add console. Okay, services dot build service provider. What are you complaining about here? Yeah, I don't have any create singleton services here. Parameters to configure, whatever. Logger program. Of type program. There we go. Builder services, build service provider. Yeah, sure thing, Rev. Change this to startup log. And I'm going to go startup log dot log information. Startup log has been created. Let's see what's going on. All right. Let's build this. Or actually, let's just run it just to see what's what. And here is my startup log has been created. Let's see what's going on. Good. So we know that works. And go to definition. I'm going to add logger of program. Startup logger. Startup log. Save it. Startup log. Save that. Come down here. Push this down to a new line. Comma. Logger program startup log. Save. Okay. Next question from Mr. Copilot. I have an application that I work on locally on my laptop and host in the cloud. When loading configuration, I'd like to check the hosting location, and then if local, load configuration one way, if in the cloud, load the configuration settings from a different source. How can I determine where the application is running? I don't want to set environment variables when I'm running locally. I know I have to use environment variables when I'm running locally or when I'm running in the cloud. If you're running locally in their cloud, you can use environment variables. No. Environments.hosting. No, that is not the way. No, that doesn't help me at all. Well, I suppose I could use env.is development. But startup logger dot log information string loading configuration for environment now. A JSON file. Builder.configure. No. Save. Create services. I have a feeling that we're failing down in here. So what the heck? Try. Paste. Catch. Exception E. Startup logger dot log error. And exception occurred while getting app configuration And now I need to pass. Oh no, I passed the exception first. And I should change that to EX because E is for event args for some reason. So I can try it, catch an exception that occurs, log it, and then carry on. Because I don't want to bubble up. Hey, Algrave, what's up, buddy? And let's just see. No, I don't want to be there. And let's go startup logger dot log information. I think I have the configuration settings. I don't know. All right, let's spin up and see what we get. We should be able to look at the logs. And sure enough, we have startup log has been created. Let's see what's going on. Loading configuration for development. I think I have the configuration settings, and then it carries on down through here. All right, good. So, I am gonna come up into my, where's my use? NPC access in the dependency helper. Use NPC server access. Okay. And I configuration. Oh God, yeah, Rev. I've actually been looking into spending limits and actions to basically just suspend everything once I hit like 90% of my spending limit. What I've done so far is the app service, I'm using the free tier. There's a free Azure SQL database that you can use. And the SQL database is not exposed publicly. It's only exposed to specific Azure services. My OpenAI service is pay as you go, and it's not available publicly except to my own IP address and things up in Azure. And then as soon as this is running in the cloud, I'm going to delete my own ability to connect to it from my laptop. So it'll only be accessible from the cloud. And then I stuffed the application itself behind my own personal login. So only I can access it. And so because the public thing is free tier, and after, like, if it gets DDoSed with people trying to open it and unsuccessfully log in, after an hour each day, it just shuts off. The only thing that's actually costing me money is the token token consumption on the AI service, and it's buried behind several layers of applications. So hopefully, I'm not going to get taken to the cleaners and end up washing dishes in the Microsoft headquarters cafeteria or something like that. They might just like make me work for them and on the Let's Resurrect Clippy team or something like that, which, you know, would be my own personal kind of hell. So here we're trying to throw a new argument exception. Oh, Azure Vision? Oof. Um, there are free grants, like free monthly quotas in Azure Cognitive Services for Azure Vision, I believe, but it's very limited. If it's just like a personal thing that only you're going to use, then you're fine. If it's like a product thing, you're going to need to figure out your appropriate pricing. All right, let's figure out what I need to do here inside my dependency helper to get that logged. I don't really want to inject a new logger. So what I'm going to do is var dependency logger equals services dot get create scope. Nope. I don't want to do the build service provider thing. That feels goofy. No, that feels bad, man. Configuration. You know what? I'm throwing. Okay, so that's the services collection. That's the services provider. So I'm throwing here. So all I'll do is rather than try to do the logging inside here, I will come back down to program and try this. Catch exception EX. And startup log dot log error EX could not attach the SQL provider. And then we're going to throw. And this shouldn't screw up our stack so much because that's a fatal startup error. And if we're vomiting at this point, we're not starting the application, and it will not have the god-awful performance implications that the try catch throw usually has. So, and I don't often like doing this, but I'm going to commit. Enter a message, adds some logging capabilities at app startup so that I can diagnose what's happening as the app starts. Commit all, Save and commit. I'm going to push. And I'm going to go to GitHub. Okay, so this is up in Microsoft Azure. Oh, that's just my log stream. Lol. All right, new window it is. And we're going to GitHub. Boop. And we'll go in here to GM tools, compare and pull request, add some logging, create pull request, checking for ability. Yes, squash and merge. Confirm. Make it so. Engage. Pull request successfully merged and closed. Come over to actions. Make sure my CI build executes. And I really need to alter my CI build thingy so that it only runs on pull request or on completed pull request into main. My triggers are a little goofy up here. And I had build and deploy over to Azure running every time I committed to main. And yeah, I turned that off. It's now manual trigger. I could probably configure it as a cron job or something like that. So it's building, and it built. Good. Let's go back to my actions. Run the workflow. Run the workflow. Make it so. Engage. Do the thing. Star Trek The Next Generation would have been far different from what it was if Sir Patrick Stewart had put on the French taunter accent from Holy Grail instead of his rich British Shakespearean actor accent. If he had instead done it, engage, Alloborg. You don't frighten us, silly robot people. That would have made a completely different show. It would have rivaled Lower Decks. As a matter of fact, I'd love to see Lower Decks do an episode where they meet Picard and he actually does that outrageous French accent, you silly people. That would make my life. Okay, so build worked. Yes, we've got a ton of build warnings. That is a point of order for myself. Very soon I'm going to need to spend some time on these streams where I just knock out all this tech debt that I've done. I've cut some corners with the purpose of getting this thing built, working, and deployed, rather than built, the code is up to my personal standards. Oh, well, now I need to change the UI to make it my personal standards and so on. So I've been kind of sacrificing my personal idea of how things should be in terms of having something out there. It's not to say that I've written disgusting, vomitous, stenchful code on purpose just to get it out the door, but I am aware that there are things that I need to clean up before I can call this a viable long-term product that'll have some legs. Right now, I'm just looking for in production and not too hard to fix, rather than in production being the only criteria. I want it in production, easy to maintain, easy to repair, easy to extend, secure, all of those things. So it looks like the deployment has executed. And if I pull my log roll over here, we can see that it's doing things. Running user provided startup command, updated the CA certificates, blah, blah, blah. I think I have the configuration settings. All right. Well, if you think you have the configuration settings, let's come over here and go home. I probably have to reload because the app is in a funny state. So we're home. And if I come into NPCs, and I'm actually going to shrink this down to a smaller window so that I can see things running in the background. As a matter of fact, we'll go down full on. Okay, yeah, failed to determine the HTTPS port for redirect, whatever. And let's just hit NPCs and see if we get, yeah, so okay. NPC access SQL provider, format of the initialization string does not conform to the specification starting at index 0. That's some new information that we didn't have before. So fantastic. That's lovely. So let's also see loading configuration for production. All right. Okay. So it is as I suspected. The connection string for my database in app settings is empty. I know this because I don't have any values in there in the checked in code. And the connection string for the database in Azure is held in an environment variable. So what that says to me is so I can bring up app settings because it doesn't matter. Like user data, the connection string that it's reading is ha 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 nope. And it can't connect to a database called ha 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 nope. So the whole reason I wanted to echo these error messages out to the log is so that I could diagnose what's going on and confirm my suspicions before I just go start changing code based on a gut feeling. And my gut feeling was that it wasn't getting the correct connection string on spin up. And my gut feeling was just confirmed. So what that means is over here in Dependency Helper, I'm pulling in the configuration object for the entire darn app. And I'm using Microsoft's very generic configuration interface and get connection strings and all that stuff. Now, what if I were to there's other ways I could do that than injecting iConfiguration all the way down into my data layer. That gives me the creeps. I don't like doing that. However, if I were to pass the initialization string directly access the initialization string when I'm firing up my configuration. Yeah. And tell it, if you're in production, go here for these settings and use these keys. If you're in development, just go ahead and use the app settings.development.json. And I think that puts us at a really good stopping point because I'm actually expecting a call in about 20 minutes or so. And I need to let my phone get some charge and kind of psychically prepare myself for it. And also confirm that the call is actually going to happen. So I'm going to make myself some notes right now. First, I'm going to close down all of this Azure stuff because I don't want it running in Windows while I'm away from my keyboard, even though I can technically lock my stuff and everything like that. This can come over here. Goodbye. Do I have any other windows open that I don't want? Nope. Okay, so if we're in the development environment, use app settings. If we're in production, we want to bring in other config sources as well. And that's where we're going to pick up this afternoon. i.e. environment vars. Hey, Campo Computing. I am just wrapping up for the morning session. But I'll be back around 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern time to continue this train of thought. Remember, there's some kind of override that happens when stacking configuration sources. I believe it's last one added has precedence. I remember running into that a while ago. Where I had the same setting defined in multiple places and discovered that the order in which I added the configuration sources impacted the precedence of, which one wins when I've got conflicts from one source to the next. And I believe I determined that it's the last one that you add wins in the case of a tie. So I use the term MVP in the title as minimum viable product, and I've been playing let's pretend we're going to sell this, because the goal of this series of streams, Campo, is to show and demonstrate a lot of the architectural and code design decisions and techniques and so on and so forth that are pretty common to just about any piece of .NET software. Oh, I'm not flexing 10x coding. I am not a 10x coder. No. I'm really just trying to demonstrate some techniques and design ideas and ways of approaching structuring our applications and even structuring the UI code and stuff like that. That are sort of gifts to future us. I don't like to say that what I do is the way or the best way or that other people have the worst way or whatever. I don't even necessarily like the term best practices. that 9 of 12 just put into the chat, because that suggests that other practices are worst practices. And okay, so I'm going to retract that whole sentence that I just made, because there are absolutely worst practices, and there's a lot of them. And many of them you can spot right on Microsoft Learn. That's actually a big problem I have with Microsoft's documentation. I understand why they tend to go straight into, here's how you use the thing that we're talking, that here's how you use this piece of tech in this article, and then they put it in a really inappropriate place. Like, I've seen connection strings inside Blazor files that where your UI file goes directly from the publicly exposed server page directly into the database. And I look at that and I feel several of my sphincters tighten, because I'm like, my God, you could drive a truck through that security hole. And so, but the Microsoft articles are designed to demonstrate just how to use, not necessarily where is the most appropriate place or how to most securely use. The Microsoft Learn articles are largely written to, here is how to write the code to do the thing, without all of those other things around it. And I've found, and I've been victim to this. I was a software programmer for probably close to 12 years before I went to this architect's course. And something that the guy said during that architect's course is, if you want to build a secure system, pretend the hackers already have root inside your network. And to borrow from my kids' vernacular, I was shook. And I took that course like 6 or 7 years ago, and I remain shook. And people are like, Rob, why don't you like Node.js and Python for server applications and so on and so forth? And I'm like, well, okay, so Node and Python and all of those interpreted languages are fantastic. If I needed to do heavy duty machine learning code, or I wanted to do very iterative development where I'm just grinding against some calculations and so on, and I want to use something like a Jupyter notebook or what have you, to get to do those experiments quickly, Python is the way to go. If I want to write a service that's going to provide a public API on the internet, I need my code compiled. I need the assemblies signed cryptographically. I need the server set up so that it won't run any assemblies that are not signed with a specific cryptographic key. And all of that stuff, because if the bad guys get root on my server, they can change my API code. They can change my website's server code, so that every time somebody logs in, off goes their password to a text file somewhere, and then it's up on the dark web next week. So I really do prefer compiled languages for the server. I also don't love the experience of debugging JavaScript in the browser. It's frustrating to the point where it enrages me. So I kind of avoid it. And yeah, like the people that are pushing frameworks, like React, Angular, Vue, all of those things are wonderful for building out user interfaces and so on and so forth. I don't love the idea of using JavaScript on the server for all of the reasons I just said. There is a place for it for rapid prototyping, but it's been my experience that a rapidly built prototype gets shipped to production as soon as the decision makers that hold the wallets see it, whether it's ready for prime time or not. And I've actually talked a CEO down. Back when I was working at a healthcare company a couple of years ago, I had done a software demo, and it was just the mandate was how test this technology, show me, build something small that shows that we can use it and that it's suitable for this scenario. And don't put a whole lot of thought into it, so on and so forth. And then, sure enough, the CEO was invited to the demo for that proof of concept app that I wrote. And luckily, so was the chief information security officer. And I did the demo, and it worked. It executed the desired work use case just wonderfully. And the CEO was like, "So great, can we put this into production next week?" And I said to him, before the CISO could say anything, "So that's your Maserati out in the parking lot, right?" And he was like, "Yeah." "All right. So I can ship this, but what I want you to do is take the keys to that Maserati and throw them into the middle of the parking lot and wait, because that's what we're doing if we ship this." And the chief information security officer was like, "Oh my God, thank you. Do you want to learn InfoSec?" I was like, "No, I don't want to be on your team." I like building. I like building things that are going to work and have legs and so on. But in answer to the MVP thing, security is absolutely part of that minimum, and it's absolutely part of the viable. The ability to maintain and monitor and extend are absolutely part of minimum viable. The code may not be perfect. It may not be exactly compliant with my own personal standards. The UI may not be perfect, but if it's usable, I don't care if there's a wire hanging out here and there, or there's a rough edge, or there's a stain over here or whatever. I can fix those things up later. As long as the core functionality of being able to say, my players just ran into a commoner and they're asking questions. And I don't know anything about this person sitting at the tavern other than that they're sitting at the tavern drinking ale. Push a button. Okay, it's a gnome. They grew up as an urchin. Now they're an herbalist. Well, what's their name? Push another button. Ask the AI to build some more details for me based on those randomly generated attributes. And suddenly it's, okay, well, his name is Flippy Floppy Cheese Nose, and he grew up on the mean streets of Gnomeville, and he always liked walking in the woods and learned that some of the plants that he found were good for when he was hungry or when he had a case of the sneezels or what have you. And so now he's an herbalist. And he looks like he's got purple hair and light brown skin and a big squidgy nose and is wearing a funny hat. And all of that stuff comes out of the AI. But gnome, urchin, herbalist, those are basically a roll of the virtual dice. And I can go click, cool, there's my gnome, click, there's his name, there's his description, there's his personality. This is a little bit about how he grew up and where he came from. And so now I've got some stuff to chew on when my characters ask further questions. I did not make a model. I'm using, for the Azure deployment, I'm using GPT 4.0 because it's tied for cheapest with 3.5, and 4.0 has a pay-as-you-go thing. 3.5, I believe, is only available under pre-provisioned units. And when I'm debugging and developing in R&D locally, I'm running Phi3 Mini using Local LM, which is a program that lets me host a small language model right on my local laptop. So the bulk of the work has been done against Phi3 Mini. And once I've got all of this uh, internet stuff going. Once I've got it all hosted up in the cloud, I'll be able to demonstrate it running against GPT-4o. And I think I actually have a phone call coming up in like 7 minutes. So I need to run. Death Packs, thanks for the follow. Campo, thank you for the follow. Holy cow, I've just gotten like a follow storm here suddenly. And Serencautum Ready, thanks for the follow from you as well. And that's fantastic. I will be back in about an hour and a half, and I'm going to continue adding logging, altering the way I'm doing my configuration setup. I'm going to make that configuration loading environment sensitive so that when I'm running on my local machine, it loads my configurations one way. When I'm in the cloud, it's going to load the configurations another way. And hopefully we'll get this thing bootstrapping and running sometime today or tomorrow. So, folks, new friends, old friends, thanks for hanging out. This last few minutes has been a fantastic conversation. And it's these organic conversations that happen that are incredibly valuable. And it tells me that I need to put the chat roll up in the stream and the video so that people who are watching the archived videos actually get some context about the tangents I go off on. So, yeah, when I get a bunch of tech folk in my chat and we're all like talking and stuff, I think having that chat visible on the future videos is going to be really useful for people that are tuning in offline. So thanks again for hanging out, guys. I've got a link tree with stuff to my YouTube and my webpage and so on and so forth, and my socials and all of that stuff. So if you're of a mind, hit the link tree and interact if you will. If you're not interested, don't bother. I will see you all again in about an hour and a half, 1 p.m. Eastern time. Take care, folks.